Uh, Toxic workplaces are over 10 times more likely to make you quit your job than a terrible salary.
10 times, wow.
Yeah, 10 times. That is a staggering statistic from the MIT Sloan Management Review. But, before you draft that fiery resignation letter or fantasize about a dramatic exit, we need to talk about a much more pressing reality.
Right, the immediate survival part.
Exactly. We need to figure out how you are going to survive Tuesday.
Surviving the immediate day-to-day is really the critical first step. I mean, when you're operating in a psychologically unsafe environment, just bracing for impact from a difficult boss or a manipulative colleague, your body is essentially stuck in a constant stress
It's
response.
exhausting.
It is. You really can't make strategic career moves when your nervous system is, on fire.
Which is exactly why we're framing today's deep dive as an exclusive conversational career coaching session. So I'm going to step into the shoes of the professional who's currently navigating these murky, toxic waters, looking for real tactical advice.
I love that.
And you are bringing the expertise of the seasoned career coach and workplace strategist. We are basically building a survival and exit toolkit for you, the listener.
Well, I am ready. And we are drawing from a really comprehensive stack of sources today. We have mental health and workplace wellness guides from Healthline and the New York State Office of Mental Health.
Always good to have the clinical perspective.
Absolutely. We're also pulling legal frameworks and documentation strategies from Folkman Law and the U.S. Department of Labor. And we're analyzing corporate training insights from Optum and the coaching platform Coach Hub to understand how these behaviors actually impact organizational structures.
Okay, let's jump right into the immediate defense, because when you have to interact with someone who seems to thrive on creating drama or tearing you down, you obviously can't just walk away every single time.
No, you can't, especially if it's your manager.
Right. So the Coach Hub report in our sources details a psychological response for this exact scenario, and they call it the gray rock method. Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is a gray rock in this context?
Well, gray rocking is a fascinating psychological tool. It was originally utilized by mental health practitioners to help clients manage individuals who display high conflict traits,
Like what kind of traits?
particularly those on the narcissistic personality disorder spectrum, or NPD. The core mechanism here isn't about fighting back. It is about making yourself entirely unappealing as a target.
So just blending in.
Exactly. You deliberately ignore attempts to upset you by becoming neutral, uninteresting, and emotionally unresponsive, just like a gray rock on the ground.
It sounds like emotional camouflage, like playing dead when a bear attacks. You're just making yourself the most boring, unappealing target possible so they eventually wander off.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. I mean, toxic individuals often use provocation as a way to regulate their own internal chaos or just to exert power. They are actively hunting for that emotional supply.
Their reaction.
Yes, by keeping your facial expressions neutral, avoiding prolonged eye contact, and offering only brief factual answers, you cut off that supply. And the golden rule here is absolute privacy.
Meaning no personal chat.
0. You never share personal anecdotes or weekend plans. You give them absolutely no material to weaponize against you later.
But wait, if someone is actively trying to get a rise out of you, and you suddenly go completely flat and boring, won't playing dumb or ignoring them just make them poke you harder? Like, won't they notice you're ignoring them?
What's fascinating here is your intuition is spot on. It highlights a major psychological mechanism you have to be prepared for, which is called the extinction burst.
Extinction burst.
Yeah. When a behavior that previously yielded a reward, in this case, getting a rise out of you, suddenly stops working, the person doesn't just give up immediately. They escalate.
Oh, yikes.
Think about a broken elevator button. When you press it and nothing happens, you don't just walk away calmly.
Right, you start mashing the button faster and harder.
Precisely. You try to force the system to work the way it used to, so a toxic boss might suddenly start micromanaging you more aggressively.
Or a coworker might start invading your physical space.
Exactly. They will test the boundary to see if your new lack of reaction is permanent. And this points to the internal risk of gray rocking, which Coach Hub specifically warns about.
Here's the downside.
A significant one. Suppressing your genuine emotional responses requires a massive amount of cognitive load.
Yeah, I can imagine. It takes effort to hide how you feel.
Over time, hiding your true self and constantly monitoring your reactions can actually cause you to disconnect from your own identity. Plus, it severely reduces your work efficiency.
Because you're spending all your energy just trying not to react.
Right. A huge percentage of your brain power is diverted to emotional suppression. So it is a short-term shield to survive an interaction, not a permanent lifestyle or career strategy.
So what does this all mean? Because if gray rocking is just a temporary shield that drains your cognitive battery, the inevitable question is how you repair that damage once the interaction is over.
And you have to recharge.
Right. Operating in that kind of high-tension environment causes serious downstream effects. The Healthline data points to chronic anxiety and insomnia. So how do we regulate our nervous system right at the cubicle without needing a week-long vacation?
Well, this requires a fundamental shift in how we view self-care. It cannot just be bubble baths or something you save up for the weekend. The New York State Office of Mental Health infographic outlines workplace self-care as a series of daily operational rituals.
Like small things you do at your desk.
Exactly. It's about micro-interventions that interrupt the sympathetic nervous system's stress loop throughout the day.
One of the interventions they mention is the 20-20-20 rule, and usually you hear about that in the context of avoiding digital eye strain, staring at a screen too long.
Right, but the sources reframe it as a psychological tool to combat mental fog. Every 20 minutes, you look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds.
How does that help with a toxic boss, though?
The mechanism behind it is actually rooted in biology. When you're stressed, your visual field literally narrows. It's an evolutionary response to hyper-focus on a physical threat.
Oh, wow. Like tunnel vision.
Yes. So by forcing your eyes to break that focal length and look into the distance, you're physically signaling to your brain that the immediate environment is safe. It helps downregulate that acute stress response.
That's fascinating. And there was another tactic in there, the 60-second desk cleanup, just organizing papers or throwing away old coffee cups for 1 minute.
Right.
I imagine that is about reclaiming a sense of control, right? Like a micro sanctuary at your cubicle. When the broader corporate culture feels completely out of your control, organizing your immediate physical square footage gives your brain a tangible win.
It creates a physical boundary of order, but you also have to establish psychological boundaries to protect your productivity.
Like what?
The sources discuss boundary cues. So visual signals like wearing large headphones to indicate deep work, or verbal cues like stating you have a hard stop at a certain time to deliver a project.
Okay, let me push back on that, though. How that plays out in reality. If I put on headphones or tell a toxic manager that I'm busy and can't talk right now, they're likely to spin that as insubordination.
They might try.
Yeah, they'll label me as not a team player. How do you construct a boundary without just handing an abusive boss ammunition for your next performance review?
You neutralize their attack by tying the boundary directly to the company's bottom line.
Yeah.
You don't frame it as a personal need for space. You frame it as a professional necessity for output.
Ah,
You say something like, to ensure this client presentation is flawless by 3 p.m., I need an hour of uninterrupted focus to review the data.
wow, that's smart. It makes it incredibly difficult for a manager to penalize you without implicitly admitting they want to sabotage the client presentation.
Exactly. You make your productivity the shield. Establishing psychological safety is critical. Because that MIT Sloan data you mentioned earlier, toxic culture, driving people to quit 10 times faster than low pay, that proves the emotional cost is just unsustainable. Healthline strongly recommends taking your lunch entirely away from your desk, ideally outside, to physically break the context of the stress. And you need a post-work ritual.
Like a transition activity.
Yes, a specific walking route or something to consciously flush the work negativity before you enter your home life. Boundaries preserve your productivity, which is the ultimate defense against a sabotaging boss.
But self-care and clever boundary framing only go so far. If a manager is truly toxic or a workplace is fundamentally abusive, breathing exercises aren't going to stop them.
Sadly, no.
When the situation escalates beyond daily friction and begins threatening your career trajectory, we have to move from defensive self-care to active preparation.
This is where we transition into documentation. When you realize the environment is not going to change, you must start building a factual record of the behavior.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. Our sources from Folkman Law provide stringent guidelines on how to document workplace harassment so that it actually holds up to scrutiny.
Yes, and the foundational rule, and this literally cannot be compromised, is that the documentation must be entirely private.
The sources are incredibly strict about the hardware. You cannot use a company laptop, a work email address, or a shared corporate cloud drive to keep your notes.
Never.
It has to be a personal notebook or a secure app on your personal phone.
You have to assume that your access to company systems could be severed at any moment, or that IT can monitor your files. If you are suddenly terminated, or if your toxic manager demands access to your hard drive, you lose your entire timeline.
And your evidence is just gone.
Exactly. You need uninterrupted, secure control over your evidence. Furthermore, the timing of your documentation dictates its legal and professional weight. Entries must be contemporaneous.
Meaning written down immediately after the incident occurs, like right away.
Correct.
Yeah.
Human memory degrades rapidly, especially under stress.
Mm.
If you try to recall exactly what your boss said to you 3 months ago, your memory will be easily challenged by HR or legal counsel.
They'll just say you're misremembering.
Right. But if you write it down 10 minutes after the meeting ends, while the details are pristine, it carries significantly more evidentiary weight.
Folkman Law stresses that these entries must be strictly factual, not emotional. Date, time, location, exact quotes, and witnesses.
Yes, just the facts.
But honestly, keeping a secret journal of every slight, every aggressive comment, and every microaggression, doesn't that just force you to fixate on the negativity? It feels a little paranoid to keep a secret ledger on your boss.
This raises an important question. It's a very common hesitation, but the psychological reality is actually quite the opposite. Documenting is an anti-gaslighting tool.
Anti-gaslighting, I like that.
Toxic environments are rarely defined by one massive, explosive event. They are usually characterized by subtle, cumulative abuse. Death by 1,000 cuts.
And when it's subtle, you start doubting your own perception. You wonder if you're just being too sensitive or if you misinterpreted a tone.
Exactly. When you have a clear, factual timeline, you eliminate that self-doubt. You can look at the data objectively and see the pattern. It provides a sense of control in an uncertain situation,
That makes sense.
and it shifts the balance of power in your favor. In any internal investigation or legal proceeding, the person with the most detailed, organized timeline controls the narrative. It protects you against accusations of exaggeration if you ever need to go to HR, an EAP, or an employment lawyer.
Your private ledger is basically the foundation of your power.
It really is. And you also have to back up that ledger with digital evidence. Forwarding inappropriate emails to a personal account, taking screenshots of unhinged Slack messages, or saving voicemails before the company server auto-deletes them.
But again, capture everything factually without adding emotional commentary to the files.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's assume you have meticulously maintained this log for a month. Now comes the hard part, evaluation. How do you actually analyze this data? How do we tell the difference between a boss who is just a certified jerk and a workplace that is breaking the law?
Well, to decipher that, we look at the guidelines from the U.S. Department of Labor regarding prohibited workplace harassment. The most crucial concept to grasp here is that federal law is not designed to enforce general workplace politeness.
So it's not illegal to just be mean.
Right. The DOL explicitly states that petty slights, annoyances, and isolated incidents usually do not rise to the level of legal harassment.
So the law regulates discrimination, not manners.
Correct. The DOL breaks actionable harassment down into two primary categories. The first is quid pro quo.
It's for that.
Exactly. The classic understanding is a supervisor demanding sexual favors in exchange for a promotion or threatening termination if you don't comply. But the DOL guidelines expand on that in ways people might not expect.
Like what?
Well, quid pro quo encompasses any scenario where employment decisions are contingent upon submitting to unwelcome conduct based on a protected trait. For example, the DOL notes it can be religious.
Really?
Yes. If a supervisor makes participating in their personal religious activities a requirement for keeping your shift assignment, that is a direct violation.
Wow, okay. And the second category is a hostile work environment, which seems much more nuanced. The standard here is that the conduct must be subjectively abusive to the victim, but also objectively severe or pervasive enough that any reasonable person would find it hostile.
The severe and pervasive standard is the critical legal threshold. A single off-color joke usually won't meet it, but a daily barrage of targeted insults will. And the underlying requirement for it to be a federal issue is that the hostility must be based on a protected class.
Meaning the harassment is specifically tied to race, color, national origin, religion, disability, genetic information, age, or sex, which also includes sexual orientation and pregnancy.
Correct. The DOL provides stark examples for this. Mocking someone's physical disability, relentlessly demeaning an employee's accent, using racial slurs, or displaying highly offensive symbols like swastikas or nooses.
Really extreme behavior.
Yes, but they also include microaggressions, provided they are pervasive enough to alter the conditions of employment and are rooted in those protected categories.
Okay, let's apply this to a very common corporate scenario. Suppose my boss is an equal opportunity yeller. They scream at the marketing team, they scream at the accountants, they hand out impossible deadlines to everyone regardless of age or gender, and they provide zero constructive criticism.
Right.
They're a textbook bully. Based on the DOL guidelines, that's a highly toxic environment, but it might not actually be actionable harassment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, assuming there is no underlying discrimination based on a protected class
Yeah.
and no quid pro quo, you are likely dealing with a legally permissible jerk.
A legally permissible jerk, that's a harsh reality.
It is. However, from an organizational standpoint, that behavior is catastrophic. The training materials from Optum and CoachHub focus heavily on eradicating this exact type of generalized bullying.
Because it hurts to the bottom line.
Exactly. It
Mhm.
destroys psychological safety, it plummets productivity, and it causes the massive turnover we discussed earlier. Companies bleed money when they harbor equal opportunity bullies.
But the courts won't necessarily step in to save you from a bad manager if they are equally bad to everyone. Making that distinction between illegal harassment and just a broken corporate culture really dictates your entire strategy.
It gives you clarity. If your documentation proves illegal harassment based on a protected class, you have a clear path to file a formal HR grievance, contact the EEOC, or consult an employment lawyer.
And if it doesn't?
If your log simply proves your boss is a bully and the company culture rewards it, your energy is much better spent quietly leveraging your network, updating your resume, and executing a strategic exit.
So it's all about reclaiming your agency. Instead of just reacting to the chaos, you're systematically dismantling its power over you.
Exactly.
To recap the journey for you, the listener, you deploy gray rocking to neutralize immediate provocations and protect your emotional reserves. You rely on the 20-20-20 rule and strict productivity boundaries to regulate your nervous system and recover your equilibrium at your desk.
And then you secure your position by maintaining a private, contemporaneous log of the abuse, using that factual data to determine whether you need a lawyer or just a new job.
The ultimate takeaway here is that you are not powerless, even when the environment is designed to make you feel that way. You deserve a workplace where you feel respected, safe, and psychologically secure. Do not compromise your values to match theirs.
Recognizing the mechanics of toxic behavior allows you to stop internalizing it as a personal failure.
It gives you the distance needed to make cold, calculated decisions about your career. Which leads to an interesting final thought for you to mull over.
Oh.
We've spent this entire discussion focused on the traditional dynamics of toxic bosses in physical offices. But as we transition deeper into remote work and AI-driven productivity monitoring, the nature of workplace harassment is mutating.
That's very true.
Will the physical distance of remote work finally kill the traditional toxic boss? Or are we just trading the yeller in the corner office for invisible, algorithmic forms of digital harassment? What does the gray rock method even look like when your manager is a keystroke tracking software program?
That is a terrifying thought.
It really is. If you were to read back your own documentation log a year from now, would it read like a diary of daily endurance or the first chapter of a career change? What is your personal breaking point between managing a toxic situation and realizing you deserve to leave it behind entirely? It's something to consider as you define what kind of work environment you are willing to tolerate in the future.